Okay, we're going to spend the majority of the show today talking about the events that were just released by the CrossFit Games Instagram account. For the first part, the virtual part of the competition, we're going to analyze the women's field because we did the men's field last week, but we want to revisit the men's field just for a second because we didn't know the events last week. Yeah. And to help us do that, we are bringing in our official friend of the show, Brian Friend. Brian, how you doing this week, man?
Oh man, I'm super excited. It really feels like it's getting close now. You guys know, I'm sure you're feeling the same way, but I just can't wait for Friday.
Yeah, it has been a while since we have had something like this to talk about and to break down. So let's start by going through the events. And these were all announced today, throughout the day. They dropped them in pairs. Mm-hmm. And so we'll start with event number one is Friendly Fran. And Dave, of course, put these on his Instagram as well. 3 rounds, 21 thrusters at 115 for the men, 85 for the women, and 21 chest to bar pull-ups.
Ooh.
Gross.
Yeah. Oh, man. I mean, my initial instinct is that I think a lot of people assumed it would have been heavier, maybe.
Yeah.
And then maybe throwing something else in, like a bar muscle up, like a regular chest to bar muscle up. But I actually kind of like this one better. I like the fact that he kept the round at the 21. I mean, come on. Everyone knows that the most difficult round in the 21-15-9 in Fran is the round of 15, right? So how do we make it friendly? We just get rid of that round.
You ought to do it. Just do the round of 21. When I first saw this, it looks a little bit and it's not the same because that rep scheme was 15 back in the open. I think 2014, where you had like a 3-minute window and you had to get through. Similar as far as they kept the rep scheme the same, and I think the weight was a little lighter. I think it was 105 for the men that year, like a little heavier.
Yeah, it was 100.
100, yeah. And then we had chest to bar pull-ups as well. So.
Yeah, man, I think it's interesting that he kept it at 21 because all of the athletes, and we can dive into this more, are capable of doing the 21 thrusters unbroken. That makes transitions and chest to bars like, are you going to hold on for all 20, every 21 like clockwork, and are you going to transition quick? Kind of the differentiator, I think, for a lot of them.
Brian, what were your thoughts when you first saw this one?
I was expecting at some point to have high volume of chest to bar pull-ups. It's actually kind of less than I thought might be there. I wouldn't have been surprised if we saw a workout that had like 100 reps of chest to bar. So at only 63. Immediately, I'm thinking of 19.5 here, where they had 105 chest to bar pull-ups to go with a lighter thruster, but also for more reps. If you did well in 19.5, I see no reason. Like Tommy said, the weight shouldn't slow these guys and girls down enough. The people who did well in 19.5 should smash this.
Yeah. And then event 2 is a 1-rep max front squat. So pretty simple.
Yeah.
Like that one.
I mean, that's the reason. There is the have a squat rack workout. Like, okay, what is the squat rack designation specifically going to be for? It's going to be this one, because obviously if you're testing a 1-rep max front squat, it's going to be heavier than your clean. Otherwise you would clean it, because that would be your 1-rep max clean. And so it's, there's a couple of different ways they could have gone with 1, 2, 3 rep. We've seen 7 rep at the team series before in the past. That was disgusting. This one just straight up, let's see how much you can front squat, not the typical back squat. And I think this is going to be interesting because we haven't really seen a test like this before.
Well, especially after all them thrusters.
There's going to be, I mean, this is going to be a sneaky hitter. Like, like you just did a bunch of thrusts and you didn't fast. We don't know about the time frame maybe. I think this is maybe in that same first window. I believe
it is. It is in that first 3-hour window.
Yeah, so in that first 3-hour window. So where's that sweet spot of when you do the first one and the second one? We'll see.
Yeah. So pretty straightforward on that one. Brian, anything you want to add to the first 2 before we move on to the second 2?
No, I think Tommy hit the front squat pretty well there.
As he always does. Okay, let's go to the next 2. So these are events 3 and 4. Event 3, Damn Diane. 3 rounds, 15 deadlifts, 315 for the men, 205 for the women, and 15 strict deficit handstand push-ups. Deficit for the men is 3 inches. Deficit for the women is 2 inches. So that's going to knock some people out, I think. Yeah. This is where I think everybody looks good on the first one. There's nothing in that first pair that you're like, oh, that might trip some people up. This one, though, I think you start to separate a little bit.
Yeah, the deficit isn't that big. 3 inches, 2 inches for men and women. That's almost like that's just enough to where you kind of think about it a little bit. I think some athletes, there's, as weird as it may sound, some athletes they get better at the strict deficit the bigger it is, because they get the stretch reflex at the bottom, and it's naturally going to slow everyone down. So it's one of those things where, like, for me, as like similar in the same vein as a big guy, I don't like regular burpees. I like bar facing burpees relative to the small guys, because it forces you into a certain slower rhythm. This is, you know, and we can talk about it more. This is going to be, I think, a workout that is going to catapult some athletes up and really drop some athletes out of contention because of the proficiency upside down.
Yeah. Brian, what stands out to you about this one?
I was a little surprised at how small the difference was between the men's and women's deficit. I mean, you just kind of know that when it comes to certain gymnastics movements that it's harder for women. And so I would have expected a little bit bigger gap, like a 4 or 5 inch, or maybe like a 2 or 3 inch gap between the men's and women's heights. And because of that, I think that you'll see you'll just see faster times for the guys. Because I think that the small difference, a 1 inch difference, will slow the girls down a little more than the men. But and this is it's the second workout that they've announced that just, there's almost an open workout from the last 2 years. I was just going to say that very similar. Mm-hmm. And so this one was a 20.3, I think, was with the repeat workout with the heavy Diane with the handstand walking. Mm-hmm. And, you could kip in that workout strict here. And we know, for example, that some people will be worse with the strict handstand push-up than a kipping. But overall, I'd still have to say that if you want to see who's going to do well on that one, just check out 20.4. Yeah.
Then this one I find super intriguing. This is just 4-time 1,000 meter run. And, you look at it at first, you're like, well, why didn't they make it 2,000? And I think it's because Dave wanted people to, light themselves on fire and just go to plaid on this one and pull for their lives. And that's like 1,000 meters. You can do that.
Yeah. I always say that, like, the fastest max effort 501K you'll ever have is like the first or second time you do it, because you don't really understand how bad it's going to hurt. And when you finally step over that threshold, that you get to that like event horizon of pain where you're like, oh, that's how bad it's supposed to hurt. I don't ever want to go there again. I might just throttle back. But this is when the game spot is on the line. That's a little bit different. We're going to see some. That's why Alessandra Pacelli looks so tired in that photo.
I think too, what's good when you look at the pairing of these two, and Brian, I'd be interested to hear what you think about this. The people who might struggle on Damn Diane might be able to redeem themselves a little bit on the 1,000 meter row, because it's sort of like, if you're a big guy, you're not liking those deficit handstand push-ups, the strict ones, but you're loving the fact that you get on a rower and yank on that chain for 1,000 meters.
100%. And later on when we're looking at the women, I'll come back to that a little bit.
Okay. So that's 3 and 4. Now let's get to 5 and 6. So these are the last two that were announced. So event 5, Nasty Nancy, 5 rounds of a 500 meter run, 15 overhead squats, 185 for the men, 125 for the women, and then 15 bar facing burpees. Yee.
Yeah.
That gonna be ugly.
I think, it's so funny. It's such a drastically different workout with or when you insert the bar facing burpees in there. That's almost like an automatic, like it's putting the restrictor plate on the Red Dragon just to, take away a little extra juice.
Well, like you were just saying, it forces you into a pace on those burpees.
I'm kind of tossing around a couple athletes in my head who I think this is originally without the bar facing burpees under a traditional Nancy, beefed up Nancy type thing could have done well. I haven't decided yet whether or not I think that's going to change, but the 500 meter run, it's so funny. And this is such classic Dave Castro. Classic Nancy, 400 meters, naughty Nancy, 600 meters. I'm not going to give you something that people have seen before. I'm going to split the difference and go 500 meters. Yeah. It's like, okay, of course, Dave's not going to let you have something you've already chewed on.
Yeah. What do you think, Brian?
Well, to just build on what Tommy said, plus he told the athletes they needed a 300 meter turnaround course. So they're probably expecting 600 meter runs. In fact, that's what I was expecting. When I saw Nancy release, I was like, oh, they'll just have 600 meter runs every round and probably a heavier bar. I was kind of speculating. We talked about it last week, how you see the equipment list and it doesn't include anything for bodyweight movements because you don't need them. So I was wondering where he was going to slip in either a pistol or a burpee or, an air squat or something that would just throw one of these workouts off, be an extra little wrinkle in it for him. And sure enough, there it is. The burpees, like Tommy said, should not be overlooked in this workout.
And that brings us to what I think is the most intriguing event in this entire competition right now. And to quote our friend Pat Sherwood, couldn't be simpler. Max freestanding handstand hold. So I don't think we've never seen this tested before. We've seen handstand walking all the time. We've seen handstand walking over obstacles. We've seen, handstand walking for distance. I think we've seen a handstand walking race, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how many, I know all these athletes can do that.
Yeah.
I just don't know how many can sit there in a confined space where they can't like move around too much and hold a handstand.
I think this goes back and, pre-ownership change, this movement, this type of workout just screams Greg Glassman, old school virtuosity type thing, like back when, in the same vein when you remember in 2014 at regionals, when they said you have to be able to walk this distance on your hands, but if you fall down, you're done. So you have to be able to do it unbroken. So it's forcing people into this like lane of you have to be able to do this. You have to do this extremely well, and there's no margin for error here, especially with I've seen this once before programmed in a competition. Ironically enough, it was programmed in the Santa Cruz County Affiliate Cup competition back in, I want to say 2014 or 2013. And they did it at CrossFit Santa Cruz at the original gym. It was programmed for that. And I want to say Dave Castro was there. Mm-hmm. He showed up for that. So he might've been watching thinking maybe I'm going to bring that back at some point. And they had a box. You couldn't go outside of the box as long as you stayed in. And old Dave Lees, he's one of the first CrossFitters, Cave Dave, people might remember, smashed it. I mean, and it's an element of the handstand that has been overlooked for some time.
And that's what I'm curious about, because I know, for example, I know Katrin David's daughter is great on her hands. Mm-hmm. I don't know how good she is just standing still though. And I'm intrigued to see who does well in this event, because I have no idea.
Well, now we've got these 6 events that we know about. And the thing that's jumping off the page to me is time domains, because there's not very much that's long here. We got the Nasty Nancy workout is long-ish. If we, think back to 2013 when they had a similar workout like that, and with the amount of time it was taking people, so it'd be looking 20 plus minutes for most of the field. But the rest of the workouts, I don't see anything that's taken over 5 minutes really.
Well, then that brings us to what we don't know yet. And that is that is Awful Annie. We know the name, but we don't know what it is. But I think there's some room for speculation here, given what was on the equipment list that we have not seen yet.
Yeah. So we're going to post this to our Talking Elite Fitness Instagram account. It'll probably be up by the time this goes up. I think that there's a little bit of history in the .com programming that you can look at from back in the day. So if you take a walk on the wild side back to 2014, there was a post and a challenge on Instagram that was posed by HQ and Dave Castro for GHD Annie. And the demo video was Dave Castro doing GHD Annie. Yes. And I'm pretty sure he did it unbroken. It was also the demo video from I think October of 2013 as well. Mm-hmm. So I think this is another element of we could be seeing, something that the seeds of which were laid years ago, like Dave has talked about.
Know your history.
And it's some variation. Now I think for the elite athletes, just switching to GHDs, I don't think will be enough. Mm-hmm. My guess is that they'll probably double or triple the double unders a lot of people have said triple unders. I just don't think we're there yet.
Yeah, I agree. I think that would go into the realm of gimmicky.
Yeah.
But who knows? Brian, what do you think?
I had the immediate exact same thought as Tommy. Sean, I shared it with you earlier today. I remember Dave's post about that and him doing that workout. And I don't know if they'll have heavy ropes or not, but I'm thinking either heavy ropes or extra double unders. Maybe they'll start at 150 and drop by 30 every round or something like that. But yeah, the GHD sit up, obviously they have to have one. It only makes sense for it to show up here with Annie, especially if you know that Dave has done that workout before. And I've actually done that workout before. After Dave posted it, I was like, let me give that a try. I didn't do it unbroken, but I did get through it.
It's pretty impressive. And funny enough, going back, the fastest time in the winner of the GHD, I think it was at GHD, was Bobby Noyce.
Noyce.
Yeah. The 6:35 was the time.
Wow.
And that was just with the regular number of double unders. And Margot Alvarez did it at HQ, and I think she got 7:13-ish. So
okay. When you now look at the 6 that we know, if you're cutting the field down, and we don't know what 7 is, but I feel like they did a really good job, I think, of there is no stone unturned here. Where, in 2019, people were complaining about, well, you tested this too much and we didn't get to do this. We didn't get a heavy barbell. Well, now you have, it seems like every element that you would need to figure out, who's who in the zoo, so to speak, you have it in these 6. And again, we don't know what the 7th is, but you have it here. And I think that it's going to be hard for people, I think, to complain that they didn't get a fair test to prove that they deserve to come to Aromas in the top 5.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm really curious to see what the Annie time domain is. I think that the longer time domain, it might be I think the 20-ish time domain is the one thing we're kind of missing here. I could be wrong. The Nasty Nancy could be somewhere around, and you think about 120 for the 400s, 130, 185 at 115. Now you're looking at a minute. Yeah, that could be anywhere from 18 to 20, maybe.
Yeah, the winning times of the Naughty Nancy workout at the games were, for both the men and women, were 16 to 17 minutes. That's for the fastest person. And there were plenty of times coming in, 19, 20 minutes. Now they have to add the burpees in. It's not a small number of burpees. It's 75 burpees. So I do think we'll have that 20 to 25 minute. Well, plus that barbell is going to get heavy for some of them. Yeah, 185, 125. So yeah, that'll be your long workout. I just feel like the only thing that I see is, the row is going to be 3 to 4 minutes. Fran's going to be 3 to 4 minutes. Diane's going to be 4 to 5 minutes. There's like a lot of workouts. The handstand hold's going to be less than a minute. The front squat's going to be less than 10 seconds. So you got like 5 out of 7 workouts that you're looking at 7 minutes or less working time. And I don't know if there's a workout that hits what people usually would call as like the sweet spot for CrossFit. That's like a 10 to 12 minute time domain. And we might be missing that. Maybe the Annie workout will get in there.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of short workouts, relatively small test of 6 or 7 events.
Yeah, I will say in the short workouts, though, they're doing a good job of balancing out the skill set, right? So like, the 1,000-meter row, that's where the tall and long guys are going to make up ground on Damn Diane if they're worth the same amount. Then front squat, if you have some like light ninja guy that can smash Fran, well, you're not going to crush the 1 rep max front squat as much either. I'll call it, us long-limbed guys. I mean, we're at a disadvantage regardless mechanically, but it's going to be a tough go.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's something for everybody in here. And I do know that I have been told the athletes, they didn't have a say in like, hey, we want to do this, this, and this, but they had they had some input on kind of at least the way they wanted to express and the things that they wanted to be able to represent in these events as far as their fitness is concerned. So I think this is pretty well balanced. And I think after these 7 events, it's going to be hard to say that we didn't get the top 5 out of this, unless you're talking about, well, we got to put them in the water or something, but that's usually, I think now you're getting away from what you would say traditional CrossFit is. I mean, I know that's a skill that we test, but I don't think you necessarily need to do that to decide who the 5 fittest are.
Under any other circumstances, I might want to see more to figure out what the top 5 is. Sure. Under this year's circumstances, yes, I think this is sufficient. I think 7 tests, a variety of stuff, whether it's you have an upper echelon strength. I think by virtue of the overhead squat, you're not really testing Olympic lifting here. The weightlifting is slightly different with the front squat, which is fine. Yeah. We've seen enough dynamic max effort Olympic weightlifting in the past, and we'll probably see it at the games too. But I think there's enough this year, given the format, to really sink your teeth into and walk away feeling good about the competition.
Yeah. Okay, so now that we know 6 of the 7 events, and we picked the men last week, and we all had our same 5, and I think it was Fraser, Vellner, BKG, Noah Olson, and Chandler Smith. That's who we all came up with, and we didn't even talk to each other when we were making the picks. Does that change? Do these events change any of those picks, Brian, and how you view the men's field?
So just today, obviously, I've made a little chart for myself where I put kind of all the events out here, and I just gave them either a 1, a 0, or a -1, based on like whether I think the event is good for them, neutral, or bad. And I think and I'm not including the Annie event because we don't know. So the best score you could have in this is a 6 if all 6 events happen to be good for you. And the only person who when I looked at this, I was like, I don't think any of these are really going to slow him down. Actually, I could take that back. There's a couple of guys who I think 5 out of 6 is appropriate score for, and they're Fraser, Vellner, and BKG, who we had at the top anyway. If there's anything bad for Fraser, it's probably the row, and it's not that he's not an incredible rower. It's just that it's short enough time domain that big guys like Tim Paulson, Travis May, or David Sharonke, who are like probably not going to be competing for top 5 spots, can just beat him on that because they weigh 15 pounds more and are 5 inches taller, you know? So that's maybe the only problem there for Fraser. For Vellner, I think Diane is probably going to be the worst event for him of the ones announced. He's just not as good as some of the other guys at the handstand push-up. I think that was his worst event in the Open that year. BKG, I think, man, he's just so good at everything. I think if anything on here is bad for him, it's going to either be the row or the 1-rep max front squat relative to the field, but we'll see. So I kind of gave him like a half point on either of those. Noah Olson and Chandler Smith. I think that similarly for BKG, the row and the front squat will probably be the worst things for Noah. Of course, with the handstand hold, we're kind of guessing. I mean, we don't really know. But I would just like to throw this out there. Watch out for Tim Paulson and Scott Tetlow on the handstand hold. First of all, Scott's like 5'5", and I have a friend who's like, he doesn't do CrossFit at all, but he's a similar stature, and he can just stand on his hands forever. But Tim Paulson practices freestanding handstand holds and has been for years. I think he can go over a minute.
All right.
So there's a little flyer out there for you on Tim
Paulson. And he's got short arms.
T-Rex, that's right.
T-Rex.
Plus, they're like the most supportive family of this show. So
exactly.
Gotta give him some love.
First family of the show. Yes. The official dad of the show, Jerry Paulson. Love the Paulsons, good people. Yeah.
So
I saw this. I mean, I don't know. Like the handstand hold to me is the one big X factor because I just don't know. You know, I think we were talking last week that you needed an average of a 7th place finish or 6th or 7th place finish in order to get into the top 5. Like, I don't know if that's an event that can really trip somebody up who is on that 6th place trajectory, and then all of a sudden you're in 29th.
You know, I think the max handstand hold hurts the most of our top guys is Chandler Smith.
I would agree with that.
Chandler is a little bit of a shotgun blast sometimes, and this is more of a sniper rifle.
Yeah.
Like you got to be really surgical here. And I know he's good on his hands and handstand walking. I just don't know if he's practiced because he's still kind of young in the sport. Yeah. Like if he's enough of one of those like later echelon guys where they weren't products of the early CrossFit where we still practice things like, freestanding handstand all the time.
Right.
And you just kind of skip those steps if you want.
Yeah, he's the only, that's the only like red mark that I had in terms of like a real negative of the guys that we had in the top 5. I think that some of the other events are actually fine for him. I think he's a guy that can go like crazy on the rower. Like you might need 3 or 4 45-pound plates to prevent the rower from moving.
Yep.
He should, I think he'll do well on Nancy. His overhead position's not the best, so we'll see about the barbell, but he's going to run and do burpees as well as any of these guys. Fran, I think he's going to do great on. I think we know from Rogue, he's really strong, so should be fine in the front squat. So there's a lot of good things for Chandler. He might be the perfect case study, like Sean said. If he has a bad event on the handstand hold and he's good across the board otherwise, is it enough to keep him out? So Chandler's, from that regard, is definitely someone we should be taking a look at. And then when I looked down the field of okay, well, is there anyone who is outside looking in on the men's side who maybe is boosted by the event announcements? I'm just liking Justin Medeiros more and more. I don't know, man.
You know what? I agree with you. For some reason, I think that he might be alive, if not inside the top 5, but within striking distance going into that, final day.
So I'm super excited to see Justin compete. I said that last week, and I just now with the events that we know, I think this only helps his case. I don't have any negatives on the board for him. I don't know about the handstand hold, but I think 4 of the other 5 events are probably advantageous for him relative to what could have come out. So
one of the sneaky finishes I think we might get is on the 1-rep max front squat. I'm pretty sure Tyler Christoffel has a 450 front squat. Like,
that'll do.
Just, from the back row. Just.
Are they still paying out for event wins?
I don't know. Well, I mean, I don't know.
You would assume so.
Yeah, you would. And another thing we haven't talked about is scoring. I'm assuming that this is going to be game scoring. And then how that carries over, like going into the final 5, who knows? But, I don't think they're going to go open scoring for this. I think it'll probably be game scoring.
Yeah. If anything,
and look here.
Go ahead.
Well, here's the thing to what Tommy's saying is like, then that's why I mentioned Tim and Scott also for the handstand holds. Like, look, if they are paying out for that and you have these kind of couplet of events and you're like, damn, like, I don't know how well I can do on this, but I know I can smash this row. Right. I know I can smash this front squat. Maybe you just settle for like a bottom 10 finish in the earlier workout and say, I'm not going to go all out on this because I can win myself $3,000 if I beat the field in this workout. And if you do that, it messes with the scores up at the top, which is what, we're used to seeing at the CrossFit Games anyway. So I kind of like that.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move to the women's field now. And we'll do what we did last week. I think last week we started with our picks. And then, Brian, you enlightened us with all the great stuff that you figured out looking at the leaderboard and checking out events in the past. And the 3 who come to my mind is basically locks. And even after I heard the events, are Tia, Cara, and Sarah. I really think that they are going to do well enough in the events that have been that we at least have some sort of historical frame of reference, and that the handstand hold won't hurt them terribly to make it. Then after that, I'm not sure. I really like Carrie Pierce. I think she's going to have a good chance of getting in. And then I always overlook Kristen Holta, so I was just going to pick Kristen Holta so I didn't overlook her. But now I'm not that sure. It's between Kristen. I think Amanda Barnhart could do very well here, and there was one more, and I'm
kind of curious. There's a few.
I think Katrin Davidsdottir might have a chance too.
I think the front squat is going to crush her. That's going to be that's going to be Katrin.
Katrin, yeah.
I think Katrin is not the best squatter for weight. Diane is interesting because Katrin's a really good, she's good at moving high percentages of her 1 rep max for reps, but her just 1 rep max just isn't that high. So she's a little deceiving in some of that element. It's Holta's tough. I'm not sure about Holta.
I'm not either, but then again, she always winds up in the top 5.
She'll crush the thrusters. She'll do well in Fran. The front squat won't be good for her. I think she'll be all right in Damn Diane. She won't be great. She'll be okay, and she'll be pretty solid on a lot of these. I just don't know where that line is.
What about Sam Briggs? Because I look at some of these events, and I think other than the 1 rep max front squat, because we know that that's not her thing. But everything else here, I mean, depending on what that final event is, I think she's got a good shot.
So the things that stand out to me besides the front squat are the overhead squat and how she manages that, and the handstand. Because if you remember, the event that kept her out of CrossFit Games in 2014 was the handstand walk, and she's not the best upside down when
but
walking.
Look, she can, not Nasty Nancy, she can run and she can do burpees, no problem. No, that's not going to be an issue with her.
Yeah, her and Holto both will smash those portions, and it comes down to how well they move the overhead squat. Let me look at this.
So I picked 7 people there. I know I was supposed to pick 5, but those are the names that I'm looking at.
Well, I think I like Kari Pierce a lot because I think she can do so well in some of the other events. She's Damn Diane, I think she can do great in the Fran. I think Nancy, she'll do good in. I think the max handstand hold, she's going to just,
probably.
She's going to destroy that. And it's funny because I feel so Kari competed in powerlifting prior to CrossFit. And I think when you look at a 1 rep max front squat compared to 1 rep max clean, I think she's better in the front squat relative to the field than the clean, if that makes sense.
For sure.
The technique aspects of Olympic lifting haven't suited her as well as the raw powerlifting type stuff. So
So give me your top 5.
I think
or top 7 like I did.
No, Sean, I gave you 5. I gave you Tia, Sarah, Cara, Carrie, and Kristen.
All right, I'll stick with Holta. I'm going to stick with Holta. Although I reserve the right to swap her out for Briggs or Barnhart.
let's see.
I mean, I really don't think that you can leave the top three off.
I don't know. So this is going to depend on how healthy her shoulder is and how well she's been able to train. But I think I feel weird saying this. I don't know why. But I think Danny Spiegel or Brooke Wells could do really well here.
Really? Okay.
I see them as very similar athletes, but they're both going to do really well. They're both very strong. They're going to do well in the front squat. They're both surprisingly good on their hands. They're surprisingly good at strict pressing. I think Spiegel may be a little bit better than Brooke, and I think that'll also help them in the handstand walk because they're both really good upside down. I think they're both mash the row. I think they're good enough in the thrusters and chest to bar that it will. I think one of those two could be in the hunt by the end. So.
All right. So Brian, we turn it over to you now for your picks and then for all the great stuff that you have gleaned from going over leaderboards and statistics.
Sure. So I'm going to give you the picks that I made 3 weeks ago before I did any of this research. And at that time, I felt that the women's field and men's field actually were very similar. And last week I talked about how I thought there were 4 people who kind of stood out on the men's side and there was going to be a huge battle for this 5th spot. And I have thought the same thing about the women from the beginning. Now that we know the workouts, there's obviously some more we can evaluate. But yeah, I had Tia at the top, Sarah right behind her, Cara in the 3rd spot. And I kind of actually feel like those 3 are, like you said, Sean, a little bit even separate from the 4th person. But prior to knowing any of the workouts, I felt like Jamie Simmons desered to be mentioned up in this top group.
Yeah.
She's incredible in online competition. She did amazingly well at Rogue. She doesn't have very many holes in her game. She's good at gymnastics. She's pretty strong. She can run. She can row. Like she's just good at everything. And her consistency in every competition she ever shows up to, for me, after her, I had Carrie and Kristen as the next 2 girls. And then I had like 10 other women that I actually thought given whatever happens to come out, if they qualified, I wouldn't be surprised. And that was like leaving off people like Christy Aramo O'Connell and Danny Spiegel and some others, Danielle Brandon, that are like, pretty talented athletes. But this women's field is just ridiculous. So so I had those 5 in with Carrie Pierce was my 5th one that I had getting in. And I just, it was very close between her and Kristen Holta, but I think, given like the stuff that I knew was probable to show up, I thought it was more likely that there'd be more that would favor Carrie, which it kind of seems to be now that we know the workout. So I had her 1 spot ahead. And after that, I'm just gonna kind of list off these women because they're so good. I feel like we need to mention them. I had all these women kind of in the same tier, and I was waiting to see the workouts before I really could separate them, because I did this similar to what we just talked about with the men, where I had like a plus, neutral, and minus. I did that not with the workouts, but with other factors like their open performances, performance at Rogue, performance in running workouts, high volume gymnastics, like 10 things like this. And all 10 of these women basically ended up at like +2, +1, 0, or -1. There was like hardly anything between them across this like diverse field of different categories. And they are, in no particular order, Gabriella Magala, Karen Freyova, Emma Mcquaid, Katrin Barnhart, Brooke Wells, Laura Horvath, Haley Adams, Caroline Reason-Thibault, and Sam Briggs. So, I mean, you listen and you're just like, man, like all those women are pretty good. And if they got in the top 10, I wouldn't surprise any of us. But those were 7 through 16. Those were not in my top 6 rankings. And you're still talking about this field that's just phenomenal. And when you have a field that's really deep like this, suddenly, like we've been talking about, an event like the 1K row, the handstand hold, the 1 rep max front squat, where there is certainly potential that some people who are not in the top half of this field could have amazing performances. Like you think about Andrea Solberg. She just might be top 3 or 4 in the handstand hold.
Yeah.
And there might be Kendall Vincelet's got some gymnastics background. And Christine Best is pretty good in gymnastics movement. So like there's tons of girls that could just suddenly like leapfrog over if you're, Karen Freyova and you can't do a handstand hold. Maybe you're great at all these other CrossFit events, but if you haven't practiced that, suddenly you take a 25th and that's it. Like in the women's field, for sure, if you have an event finish that bad, you won't make it.
That's the proximity mind.
No, I agree 100%.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's like you make the wrong step, and that's the workout that I feel like, depending on how they score, it could end someone's hopes.
Agreed. So what else did you look at then, Brian, as you were getting ready to take a deep dive into the women's field?
So same as the men, I was going through their sanctional performances, seeing how they generally did on 2-day competitions. Obviously factored Rogue into the equation as probably the best indicator for the people who participated of how they might do in something like this. And then I just was looking at their recent open performances and trying to see, what kind of combinations of movements would be beneficial for certain athletes and not beneficial for others. And then when the workouts got released, it was basically like affirmation, because as we've already mentioned, a couple of these workouts are very similar to open workouts that we're used to seeing. And so we can immediately say that when a thrust or chest to bar pull-up workout comes out, we know who's going to do well in this workout. And of course, the girls at the top are at the top for a reason, because they're generally going to be good at anything. But like you guys were saying, if you look a little bit further down the field and that some of these, it is a little interesting. I don't think the 85 pounds is going to matter at all for the girls.
Yeah.
So I don't think that there's any advantage for Amanda Barnhart in this workout. Like, the barbell is not heavy enough to make up the fact that her worst thing is upper body pulling. And even though it's only 63 chest bar pull-ups, just imagine her doing 63 chest bar pull-ups next to Carrie Pierce or Jamie Simmons. She's not going to win that workout.
The cycle speed is just...
Yeah, and neither is Danny Spiegel, and neither is Brooke Wells or Laura Horvath. They just cannot beat those girls in that workout. So the question becomes for them in a workout like that is, how good can you do? How many of the girls from the bottom half are also going to beat them? Because if they're able to salvage a 10th place finish on that workout, no problem. They'll take that all day. But if it's a 20th place finish, now you have a big hole to come out of.
Yeah, and it's funny because you look at the same thing for, like, we haven't mentioned her name yet, but Laura Horvath.
Well, the second I saw
the strict deficit handstand push-ups, it's like, well, how good can she do in those other movements in those other workouts to where she can account for that, what is not going to be a top 15 finish for her.
I might even argue that's going to be a bottom five finish for her, unless all of a sudden she got between the Rogue Invitational and now she got better at that movement.
Mm-hmm. I mean, on my notes here, I just have it written, like, if strict handstand push-ups come out, she won't make it. I had that written 2 weeks ago, and we didn't know if that would be the case, because she can do kipping handstand push-ups fairly well. Even if it was a deficit with a kip, I think she'd be okay. But this is literally the worst thing she could see. Mm-hmm. And I think it'll be enough to keep her out, which is, kind of unfortunate, but at the same time, you have to be good across the board if you want to place this well against this field.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before. We go back to her rookie year at the games and why she did so well. We went back and looked at the events. There was no handstand push-ups that year at the games.
There was.
Well, there was no
Fibonacci, right?
Fibonacci, yeah.
But it was kipping.
Kipping, right.
Yeah, there was no strict, yeah. Yep. And Fibonacci was very short reps.
Right.
Very short reps. But
so there you go. All right, what else you got for us, Brian?
So, when you're talking about a field like this, then you have to kind of I try to eliminate people instead of seeing who might emerge. And I just, now that we know some of the events, we can talk a little bit more about it. So I feel like probably after the release of events, I just think Haley Adams is going to get killed in the 1 rep max front squat. She doesn't weigh that much. I don't know how, I mean, she's a good rower, but I don't know how well she'll do in that event relative to this field. And we'll see on the overhead squat. She always surprises me with any kind of barbell cycling. But maybe it's a little heavier for her than some of the other girls. She'll have some good workouts, but I don't think it'll be enough to get a top 5. And she's someone who I heard some people talking about as kind of an outside contender. I kind of feel the same way about Emma Mcquaid. I think that she can have some great workouts. She might be top 3 in the, Fran workout. She might be top 5 in the Diane workout. But some of the heavier stuff's probably going to hold her back too. And I think that, like you said a while ago, Sean, the programming, even though there's, maybe the time domains are skewed towards that 3 to 6 minute mark, that they're testing enough variety of things that you're looking for the person who is just consistent. And the two names that kind of jump out at me here that we haven't necessarily said for the top 5 is a girl who I really, really think can make the top 5. One, which is, you know who I'm talking?
Have you mentioned her name once already?
Yeah.
Okay. Is she from a country that rhymes with Oland?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes. Okay. So Gabby Magala, for those who didn't catch on to Tommy's cryptic clues there. No, and I just think she's really solid. I remember watching her at Strength and Depth this year. She was competing against Laura and Haley were the other 2 kind of top women there, and they all did really well. But I just was watching her, and I was like, I think she's coming into her own a little bit. The women can mature a little bit younger age than the men can, both I think mentally and physically. And I think she's about 22 or 23 now, and we've seen some really good performances from women like Katrin and Tia and Brooke Wells at that age. So I think that Gabby Magala, especially now that we know some of the events, I don't see any like super holes for her unless she's, like we said, terrible at handstand walking or handstand hold. I think she's going to be right in the mix throughout the competition.
Yeah, it's funny because I look back to Dubai this year when she, finished. I think she was 4th in Dubai, but she was also arguably the most consistent because she finished every single event in 8th or better, and was the only athlete that didn't have a finish of 10th or lower. So it was like, although she didn't necessarily win events, she never had that bad like boink event. And it's funny because people forget her from last year because she had her boink event in the first event and got cut because the one big weakness that she has is legless rope climbs. And that came right away and she hit failure. So she could definitely surprise people for sure.
I did not forget that she boinked in that event because she cost me in my fantasy competition with my friends.
Oh, Brian,
she's in
somebody dinner for that.
She owes me one this weekend.
You had someone a T-bone and Applebee's for that performance.
Yeah. And then and the other one is Karen Frey, another woman, Tommy, who you've seen compete live. She doesn't do very many competitions, but when she shows up, she's pretty impressive. She was impressive in Dubai. I don't know. I don't know what her weakness is. When I was looking at her old open stats, she seemed to do like pretty well on most things. She had a couple bad workouts, but it was still like relative to the field, something that I think would be good enough to keep her close. I'd be surprised if she made the top 5, but I would be even more surprised if she wasn't in the top 10.
You picked 2 of my 3 dark horse picks from the video.
I know.
Who are the dark horses here?
Yeah. It's funny. I'm thinking about my top 5, and right now, like based on what we know on the programming, the top 5 that I have are Tia, Cara, Sarah, Kari Pierce, and Jamie Green. And then I have like my next 5 to whatever, I think that's where Kristen, I think Amanda Barnhart, that's where I think maybe Spiegel or Brooke, one of the 2 pops in. Then I think you have like a Gabby Magala or Karin Frey, like mixing up the top 10 as well. And it's, it's funny because the second place outside of 2015, 2016, when we had the podium like replication, that second place spot at the games is kind of cursed.
Yeah.
You go 2011, second place was Kristen Clever. The following year, she misses out on the podium in like a heartbreaking like event at the end. She comes down on the pull-up bar in Fran. Talena doesn't. Right. Talena gets it. You finish off the podium after being second. And then 2012 was Julie. That next year, she doesn't compete. 2013, the entire podium was basically gone with Sam and Lindsay Valenzuela not qualifying. Yeah. That obviously that doesn't carry over to 2014. 2014, Annie is second. That next year in 2015, she DNFs. Mm-hmm. That year is when we had the one different where we basically copy pasted the podium for year to year. But then after that, after 2016, you go to 2017, Katrin falls off of the podium completely. 2017, Cara falls off the podium completely. 2018 was, Laura falls off the podium completely. Now last year's Holta, is she going to be able to kind of like really be the I guess the other athlete besides Katrin to kind of break that trend, I guess.
Yeah, I would. As far as dark horses go, I would even put Briggs in there. I would not be shocked.
Yeah.
If she is in, contention there going into the final day. Like I wouldn't. Again, I don't know how. I know she doesn't like the 1 rep max front squat. That's going to hurt her. But everything else in here, I don't see anything she can't do.
Yeah.
And she's going to crush Nasty Nancy. Like I think the only thing that slows her, like we talked about, the barbell, but even that I think is manageable for her.
Yeah. Yeah, so. For sure. It's funny. I'm going to go back since I'm wearing our wrestling shirt. Sam Briggs is like the wrestler that's built for the Royal Rumble. She's built for the long haul, right? The scrappy, I'm going to fight everyone off.
Ric Flair.
Yeah, but she's not. I don't know if her time as like the main eventer, the heavy lifting.
Yeah, I get you.
If you will, to carry the show, to finish the show is there. But she, you better watch out. She's going to get her title shot from the Rumble every year.
She is.
So that's my wrestling analogy for the day.
All right, Brian, you got any more dark horses? I mean, you've basically been through the whole field here.
I have one other girl that I want to mention, but just to mention about Sam, she's I would be surprised if she made it in. I think there's actually enough to hold her back. I think that the fact that they have to go upside down twice that's a hit for her. Mm-hmm. Her worst open performance in the last couple of years was in 19.3, which had the 50 strict handstand push-ups in it, as that 50s chipper thing. Yeah. So I think that's probably a bad fortune for her that you have to get upside down twice, plus the front squat that's going to set her back. So I think that'll be more than enough to keep her out, which is, it's unfortunate, but at the same time, she's 38. Like she's 10 and 15 years older than some of these women. And just the fact that she's in the field, the stuff that she continues to do it's really difficult to fathom or comprehend how it's possible. And she might still win an event or two. If she can navigate the overhead squat, she'll be right up there in the top of the Nasty Nancy. And she's definitely going to have something to prove on the row. I don't think she'll win it, but I think she'll be in the top 3.
He's almost 20 years older than Haley.
It's true. So this is another girl, and kind of like I did with Alexander Caron last week, it's not someone that I necessarily think can win. I just think it's super easy to overlook her, and she's fairly consistent, and she's really, really good in the open format, which now that we know the events, this is it seems more and more like an open competition than a games competition. Maybe, obviously there's a couple implements that are different. There's some running GHDs and handstand holds, just a wild card, but a lot of the workouts, like we said, are so similar, and that's Caroline Reason-Thibault.
Yes.
Last year, in the Open, her Open finishes worldwide were 8th, 13th, 6th, 70th, and 6th. And that 70th place workout was 20.4, which was the box jumps and pistols with the ascending reps of the clean. So she'd probably get hurt a little bit on the 1 rep max front squat. But when you're talking about 4 finishes of 13th or better against the world, and now you only have to compete against 30 girls, that actually, like average event placement wise, is going to put her pretty close to being good enough.
Yeah.
So Carol Ann, not someone you're used to seeing in the top 5. It's very difficult to finish in the top 5 in the women's field in general, but she's very good at finishing in the top 10 to 15. And if enough of the women have a hiccup or two that costs them, she might just slide up a little higher than we'd expect to see her in a normal competition.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's going to be fun to watch. I think there's going to be some tense moments, I think, heading into the final day of competition, because I just think that there are going to be, I think, on both sides, a couple of people who separate early, but I have a feeling you're going to see a log jam between like 2nd through 8th, and I like the way that these events set up, because I think they're very balanced, and I think there's something for everybody in here. That usually means you got yourself a good collection of events.
I mean, think about this, Sean. Since you're going to be the gatekeeper, and you're going to get to be the one that announces all of it, which is awesome.
I hope I don't Steve Harvey it.
Oh man, Anthony. Yeah. But imagine it coming down to Annie, right? Awesome Annie, was it Awesome Annie? Yeah. And
is it Awesome Annie?
No, it's definitely not.
Angry Annie?
It's Awful Annie.
Awful
yes,
Annie.
That's what it is. Imagine it coming down to Awful Annie, and you've got 6 to 7 girls that are in it,
mm-hmm.
right? A million different combinations. It's like a 31 flavors up in here, and it comes down to a tripped double under.
Yeah.
You got 4 or 5 athletes grabbing the handles at the last, in the last round, and a tripped double under is all that separates them.
Yeah. I have a feeling that event is one that I wish we could watch live, because Dave always, and I always give him credit for this, his final events in competition are always they're a great race, and they're fun to watch.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering what the twist there is going to be. There's got to be, it can't be, I don't know. We'll see. But I agree with you. I think because we haven't seen the GHG yet, and it was on the list, that's got to be in there in some way, shape, or form.
I think what Tommy said right there is like margins of error are going to be small. You're going to see 10 seconds separate the entire field in the row. And it's just a matter of like, almost will. And they talk about like going to that dark space, turning off your mind and just going crazy on this rower. And those points could matter at the end. I mean, we've seen it in bigger competitions with more events, how small things from early in the competition end up yielding the results. 2017 with Cara and Tia, everyone always talks about that first run where Tia just edged out Christy. And those points are what you needed to beat Cara in the end of the weekend. And if you look back to something like the row that's coming up day one, and then could just a matter of a second or a tenth of a second or whatever be the difference between making it to the top 5 or not, earning a little extra money or not.
And here's what I understand too, for people who might not know, you have to do these in order. Like you can't pick, you can't do like the one rep max front squat first and then do Fran. You have to do them in order. So that's important that we mentioned that. There's no
can't prime the pump with a front
can't
squat.
prime the pump and then exactly. And hit your home run first and then I mean, let's be honest, we're all adults here. You can have dessert first, but when you're an adult. But we might see someone fail a GHD. Can you imagine, like, if someone's just like, I gotta sell, I'm not sure. Like, GHD is not. It's like failing a burpee. It's not something you really fail. You just stop because you think you're going to. You just don't complete the range of motion. You don't touch the pad the way you're.
I've seen someone fall off a GHD machine before.
I mean, could you imagine someone like is right there, right at that line and just goes back and throws their hands back and basically gets strung up, like one of those old timey traps where your foot gets strung up in a tree and they're just hanging there. Like they're like, oh my God, my abs cramped.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see how much more weight than me these women front squat.
Yes, that's always a humbling experience, especially after we talked about the teenager competition last, a couple weeks ago. And now we got to, watch another group of people who are much more fit than we will ever be, go out there and just put up amazing numbers.
I was just thinking about what my 1 rep max all-time front squat is, and it made me very sad.
I'll tell you mine off air, Tom.
Okay. Yeah. Well, listen, Brian, we always appreciate the time. Love doing this with you, and hopefully we can get you back on afterwards to break this whole thing down and preview the final stage, which will be the 5 men, 5 women coming to Aromas to compete for the title of Fittest on Earth.
Definitely. Thank you, guys.